Okay, so today we're going to work on exercise 129. There's not a lot of days of class left, which shouldn't be a surprise. We have 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks from today is the final portfolio. So there's not a lot of time left. Shockingly, it's December 1st already. I don't know how that happens. It still feels like it's about September. So I don't know. Anyway, today we're going to work more in SketchUp and Photoshop, working through plans so that we can kind of do the same thing we did last class where we did an elevation, only this time we're going to do it as a plan. So a lot of the stuff is similar, so it doesn't hurt to have me overlap it again. We will layer on top a little bit more detail next class when we cut a section. So basically we're going to do a plan today. On Wednesday we'll do a section, and then next Monday we'll do a perspective. And then you'll have basically all the views ready to go for your assignment 106, which I just realized I still haven't given you the handout for. But you've been doing all the work along the way, so it's not something to panic about. That last day, so a week from Wednesday, will be a working session where you guys can get caught up. You can work on portfolios. You can do whatever it is that you want to do. We'll talk a little bit about binding your portfolios. I'll bring all the sample portfolios over again. If you're thinking about your portfolio and you want to look at the samples, I can bring them any day. If you just want them, I just have to go over to my office and bring them over so you can look at them. So fair warning, that is coming. Should be well underway. I asked you to work on your portfolio last class. If you have a draft or want to show it to me, I'd be happy to sit down with you today and have a look at the draft version, and we can talk about what's working and what's not working. But in the meantime, I do want to show you about the SketchUp plans. So I apologize, everything is not working for me this morning. So if stuff in lecture decides not to work, I wouldn't be surprised, because of how backwards everything has been. My flash drive crashed this morning. It's been one of those days. Yeah. Alright, so we're back up. Let me switch to basic hidden line mode here. Let me turn off my section cuts. And I'm going to switch back to my standard, to a perspective view. And now I'll go ahead and look at my building. Okay, so I have this set up here. I do have, actually, let's just get rid of this section here. Hold on one second. Oh, unbelievable. So, but what else is new? This is the way my day is going to go. So, just bear with me. Okay, so we have this building that I modeled up last time that I used for our elevation view. And this time I want to cut a plan view of it. And so I can certainly go to my camera and go to standard views, and I can go to the top view and we can look down on it. And I can even switch to parallel projection so we're looking straight down. But that's more of a roof plan than it is an actual plan of the building. So an actual plan is cut at about 4 feet above the ground. And we do that so that you can see in a kitchen, you can see countertops, you can see where the sink is and that sort of thing. So it's cut right between the lower cabinets and the upper cabinets. That's how we hit 4 feet. Cuts through most windows, cuts through all doors, which is kind of the ideal place to be. So let me switch back into perspective and reorbit this so that we can look at it. So what I want to do is I want to cut a section, and SketchUp has a section tool built into it. I want to cut a section that cuts through this building at 4 feet. Now one of the challenges with that is figuring out where 4 feet is and where to cut the section. And so what I do as to make it a little bit easier is I go ahead and start with a rectangle, and somewhere off to the side here I'm going to draw a 4 foot by 4 foot rectangle. So I just type 4 feet, comma 4 feet. And that's fine, it's there. Then I'm going to use the push-pull tool to hopefully be really convenient if it let me push-pull it. It's so slow today. Alright, it's really unhappy because I have hidden geometry, so. Hold on a second. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I had some hidden layers and it was causing some problems here. Get rid of that. Perfect. So now I'm going to use the push-pull tool, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this up by 4 feet. And what that does is it gives me a little square that I can then use as part of a guide when I cut this particular plan. Let me go back to my layers here. There it is. And I want to turn off that so that we have just this. Life is a struggle sometimes, right? Alright, well it's not going to let me do it without these layers on, which is really annoying, but we'll turn them off. Okay, so we'll turn those back on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the section tool, and if it's not showing here, sometimes you have to enable the large tool set. So I'm going to go to Tools, View, Toolbars, and then check the box for Large Tool Set. There it is. It gives me a few more options, including the Section tool, which is the one I'm going to use. So I'm going to click on this Section Plane tool. And when I do that, it's going to create this little plane. And part of the reason I start with this little box is because it's very challenging to orient it, the plane up and down, so that you're cutting a plan, because your roofs tend to slope. So it wants to cut it on one side or the other. Now, what I'm going to do is come over to my little square and make sure that my section plane is in the horizontal direction and the arrows are facing down, which is what's happening right now. And I'll go ahead and click. And when I do that, you see that it cuts a nice section right through my particular building. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. So I have that established, and if I were to go to the view, the camera menu, go to standard views, go to the top view, and then we'll go to camera parallel projection, and let me go ahead and turn off background. And now I can see that there is the plan view of my particular building. Okay, so I have this as a basic plan view. Now, unfortunately, in this particular plan view, I have all of my walls are basically hollow. They don't have a surface on them, and I can Photoshop in a surface, but it would be nice to go ahead and fill in all of those walls with a surface. And so, if I zoom out, I might have to show section planes. Did you make the section plane on the wrong layer? Of course I did. Right, so I told you today was just going to be one of those days. One second here. Control. Alright, sorry. So this large box is the section plane. And if I were to look at it in perspective view, maybe. Today is not my day. I apologize in advance. All right. Let's section plan appears to have gone away, so go figure. Okay, we'll try it one more time. You get to watch me do it again. Alright, so I'll take the section plane. I want to make sure that's facing down. There it is. If I zoom out, we can see that there's the section plane itself. Unfortunately, I have all this terrain that I brought in. I used to do something with terrain, but there's not enough terrain in the site to worry about. So there we go. So we can see this section plane. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a special plugin. It's called the Section Tools, or the Add Section Cut Face plugin. And what it does, it should be already loaded on our systems. Of course it's not. Sometimes you just have to laugh, right? It's not even on the system. Fortunately, why would it do that? Okay, so we're just going to scrap that because it needs administrator passwords that I don't have to install it. So we're going to skip step 3, right? And we're going to set up our view. I'm going to go to camera, standard views, top. And zoom in here a little bit so you can look down on our particular plan. So I'm going to turn off guides, and I'll turn off the axes. So I have just this established. I'm going to switch to hidden line. There's my hidden line. Turn off guides. So I'm looking at just this piece. Okay, I'll make it kind of so that I can see it nicely in my particular view here. And what I'll do is I'm going to go to File. I'm going to export 2D graphic. And I can create a JPEG. Right? But what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to do it with a PDF file. And the reason I'm going to do it with a PDF file is because I want to control the scale of this output. And I told you last time while we were doing this, we did JPEGs for the elevation view, that I would show you PDFs because of the fact that you can scale it for the plan view. So that's what we're going to do. I've selected PDF file. I'm going to still click on options, and this is going to give me a different set of options than the JPEG export. And in this instance, the important thing to recognize is that we want to deal with this scale section here. So we want basically 1/4 inch or whatever inches to be equal to 1 foot. Right? If it was 1/4 inch equals a foot, if it was 1/8 inch equals a foot, you'd type in that value. Those are the important things to recognize. It will automatically adjust the size in width and height of your output. Okay, so we don't touch anything over here. We're just dealing with this right here. We do want to show profiles, right? Specify line section width, all of that. Okay. Sometimes you'll need to adjust the thicknesses of lines, and so you can get through and do that. Right. This profile line, see how it says match screen display, right? Auto width. If we uncheck that, we'll have the ability to specify in points how thick we want the lines to be, right? So just like in Illustrator, remember we were picking different point lines, right? If we were doing AutoCAD equivalents, we could do it in millimeters, right? Just the different options. So I'm going to go with the match the screen. We'll see how it turns out. If I don't like it, I'll come back and re-export it. Right? So I'll go ahead and say OK. and I'm going to save it onto my flash drive. Today is 129. And I'm going to call this lines. And I'll go ahead and click export. Okay. Now before I export more of what's going on, I'm going to go back and open Photoshop so that we can see if these line weights turned out the way I want them to turn out. And so I'm just kind of doing a preview. I'll go to File and then Open. And I'm going to pick that PDF that I just created. PDF options, basically the defaults are fine. All of that's fine, so we'll go ahead and say OK. And it brings it in. So it brought in just the plan itself. Notice the background is entirely transparent. Right? We have just the plan, which is good. So I have that established. Turned out OK. Let me zoom in a little bit and see the lines. Yeah, they're looking a little chunky. I think we probably should improve those slightly. Let me jump back to SketchUp here. I'll go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. And we're going to do the same, but I'm going to pick Options. And instead, we will do this points. And I'll say this is 0.5. Okay. Export. Replace it. And let's take one more look at it. Okay, so this kind of got a lot lighter because I shrunk down those line widths. So if we look at the lines, they're much thinner, tighter lines. Right? Probably too much so I probably need to go back and do it one more time. Sometimes it's a little bit of a happy medium. You have to go back and forth and find the right settings. So let me go to Export 2D Graphic. I'll go ahead and click Options. And this time we will do... I'm going to do it in millimeters. My head works better in millimeters because I'm used to AutoCAD. Still a little faint. But I like it for all of these. The window detail. So we'll see how that goes. Press Ctrl 0. We'll leave this as is for right now. So now what I'll do is I'll jump back into SketchUp and I'm going to start doing some of my other export options. So let me go to File, Export 2D Graphic, or excuse me, before I even do that, we're going to go through and I'm going to switch. Right now I'm in hidden line mode. I'm going to go to Edit and I'm going to turn off the edges and the profiles and I'm going to turn on the shadows. Let me go to View, Shadows. Right? Now this is one of the fundamental problems when we look at shadows in SketchUp when we've done a section, is that when we do this, we're missing, right, the upper part of the shadows. Does that kind of make sense? So if we want the actual shadow of the building, we have to turn back on or turn off the section cut so we get the full shadow. Right? And I should also turn off the section plane because it slightly lightens the overall image. So now I end up with the shadows. I'm going to have to delete parts of the shadows, like this light gray shadow here, I'll have to delete, but I can use the dark gray here on the background. So I'll go ahead and go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. I'll call this Shadows. My options here are the same. We're just going to match everything to the screen for right now. Same scale. We'll go ahead and say OK. And export. And let's confirm that they showed up the way they're supposed to. Let me go to File and then Open. And that's how nice. Okay, so obviously I didn't want to export the shadows in the PDF view, so let me go back to SketchUp and we're going to export a JPEG, but we can use the scale that we created in the PDF to scale this. So I'll go to Export 2D Graphic, and instead of a PDF, I'm going to pick a JPEG. And we'll add shadows. Click Export. Now let's go ahead and turn the edges and the profiles back on. And I'm going to turn on the section cut. It is. I'm going to turn off the shadows. Alright, there it is. And now what I'll do is I'll jump into the pen gray mode, if I can find it. Okay, can I come in like 10, 15 minutes? Alright. Looks like we'll go on a field trip in a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to switch to the pen gray mode so that we can see a little bit more of what's going on here. Let me turn off the guides there. Let me go to File, Export 2D Graphic. And we'll call this pen gray. Click Export. And since we're here, I'm going to do a JPEG export of just the plan too. So let me go to Window, Scenes, Window Styles. And I'm going to do that airbrush before I go too far. Let me just do this airbrush. And one more of just the hidden lines. Okay, so I have those all exported correctly. Now, while it's finishing its export, I'm going to jump over and do a search, Creative Commons search, and I'm going to look for ground view, so like grassy meadow ground view. And this is a really hard one to find good images, but one of the tricks that I usually use is to look up kite aerial, if I can spell it, photography. Because it tends to have pretty good downward shooting images. So it looks like there's a pretty good, that one's kind of fun if it was in the ocean, but we can kind of play around. That one's nice, but black and white. No, that one might actually work out okay. Let me open link a new tab. This one could be okay. The advantage of doing it in a from the kite vantage point is you're at about 250 feet to 500 feet, depending on how far they have the kite out, shooting down at a particular piece. If you're doing an airplane view, it's much higher, so you don't have the resolution. Satellite is obviously even higher, so you don't have the resolution. So it's kind of a nice blend. The key is just finding the right image and background texture. So anyway, I have a few already loaded up, but you can spend some time looking at it. This one, I think, might be one that I picked before. Let me go to Save As. Actually, instead of that, let me click on the download link and get the original size. So that's coming down. This one's not bad. I like it as well. Let me see the original size. I'll download that. Let me show them so that I can copy on both my flash drive. Take these two, copy them, and then go to my flash drive and paste them in. Alright, so let me jump back into Photoshop. So this was the original plan view that I had with the nice lines on it. This is going to be my scale. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of space around it because it exported just the drawing itself. Let me go to Image and then Canvas Size. This is going to change the size of the canvas, and I'm going to make everything a lot bigger. This anchor point says that I want to scale the canvas from the center of the page as opposed from the left or from the right. And I'm going to just double these numbers. So in rough numbers, we'll go 20 by 30, and I'll say OK. And you'll see that if I press Control 0, I get a lot more space around my plan. Okay? And I know it's a little hard to see on the projector. Let me go ahead and go to File and then Place. And I'm going to bring in each of these subsequent images. Let me bring in the, that was not the one I wanted. Bring in the lines. There we go. This was my original lines drawing. And if I change the blending mode to be multiply, we'll be able to see through. We can see that it's a little bit larger than I want. So I'm going to use the transformations to be able to shrink this down. So I'll press the Shift key as I start to make this smaller. And I'll work from both sides until I get the width and the height set. Zoom in a little bit. I'm trying to make sure that these match up correctly. That looks like I need to go just a little bit bigger. Alright, that's pretty good. So go ahead and say OK. And let me press Control 0 so we can see everything. So I brought in those lines just as a backup so that I could kind of see this a little bit better, so that you could see it a little bit better. Let me go ahead and go to File and then Place. And I'm going to bring in the shadows. I'll go ahead and say Place. And I want to change the layer blending mode to multiply so that we can see through it. And then once again, it's going to be a matter of adjusting the size of these images. So let me go ahead and shift, make this a little bit smaller. One of the key places that I'm looking for is right there. I should be able to adjust, start to get this to fit. This isn't going to fit quite as well because there's a little bit of an overhang on the building, so I have to get it approximately correct, something like that, and then we'll do a little bit of fill-in. So that's pretty good. Let me go to File and then Place, and I can bring in my gray pen. There it is. Once again, we'll switch to my multiply blending mode so we can see through it, and we'll do some adjustments to it. Alright, looks good. So I'm just layering these up. Now let's go back to the shadows layer, and let me go ahead and make a few adjustments. So as I zoom in, I know I'm going to need to get rid of at least this lighter color shadow. So let me go to Select, Color Range, and I'm going to pick the lighter color shadow. Now if I adjust this fuzziness slider, you can see that I'm getting more or less of that shadow. And I want it to be very tight, so it's exactly that color. I'll say OK. And let me actually go like this. Hold on a second. Make sure I'm on the shadows layer. We'll turn off the other pieces so that we're not accidentally selecting something else. And let me select color range. And it's going to be that. Okay. Then I can go ahead and press delete. So I haven't rasterized the layer, so let me right click on the layer and say rasterize. Of course isn't there. We've got a layer, rasterize layer. And actually, since I'm here, let me just rasterize all layers. There we go. Now I can actually work with it. So we'll get rid of that. Right? And actually, it might be easier to select just the dark gray. So let me select color range, select that part of it, and then I'll select the inverse and delete the rest of the page so that I have just that dark gray shadow. Press Control 0, and we can see there's the shadow. Let me go ahead and turn back on my line so we can kind of see. Now I need to do a little bit of filling in, and this is normal because of the overhang. We don't quite get a full shadow. So I'll zoom in, and then I'll use my selection tool, and I usually pick the polygonal lasso tool, and we'll go from here onto the building. Alright, there's my selection. Now I'm going to paint with the paintbrush right here, but I want to make sure that I get this exact color, so I'll use the eyedropper tool, which is right here. Pick that as my foreground color. Make sure I have that picked. Then I'll go ahead and use the paintbrush tool, and we'll paint in that section against the house. By pre-making that selection, it makes it so much easier to fill this part in. Alright, so I now have that shadow taken care of. Let me press Control 0. So I have a nice shadow that's cast by the roof of the building, not by just the building itself. I have that established. Now I'd also like to make the walls a little bit darker, so let me go ahead and do Control plus to zoom in, and I'm going to turn off the shadows. I'll turn off this and start to make some selections. And I'm going to use the magic wand, hopefully, to select interior regions, which is doing a terrible job of doing. Since that's not working, we'll just do the polygonal lasso again. Zoom in here. Start right there. That's why it wasn't working, because I was on the wrong layer. There we go. Let me turn this on. I'm going to select each of these interiors. Control minus, zoom out a little bit. I'll hold down Shift to select multiple regions here. Alright, so I have all of those selected. I'm going to work on this layer, and I'm going to paint. Let me turn the layer on, and I'm going to paint with black this time. Now I could paint with the dark gray, but since my lines are black, I'm going to go ahead and paint with black. And I'll use my paintbrush, and this will just fill in the walls for me. So I have those filled in, and actually before I do it, I'm going to make a separate layer with just the walls on it. So I'll do this one more time, but I want to make sure that I have it down the road. So let me just go ahead and make my brush a little bit bigger. We'll do this in one swoop. Turn this off. Alright. Now in all reality, I probably should also select these columns that we cut through. Alright. So if I press Control 0, we can now really see where the lines have been drawn for the plan. If we turn back on the shadows, you can see that the shadows have shown up. The pen gray, I haven't done a whole lot to it. It's just a little bit of extra line weights. Let me just sorry, I just want to move that up a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good. So, let me press Control 0 so we can see everything. Now the next piece of this puzzle is to bring in some background to work with. So I'm going to go to File and then Place. And I'm going to pick one of those images from earlier today. And I don't know which one, so let me show the thumbnails here. I'm going to do this one. Go ahead and click Place. And I'll need to do a little bit of scaling with it. So let me go ahead and hold down Shift as I scale this up. And let me put this underneath the other layers. So I'll say OK for right now. Put it underneath the other layers so we can kind of see through it. Now I need to position it a little bit so that the road goes in front, which is why I was picking it. We've got the little person here, so I think it will look pretty good from a graphic standpoint. So let me go ahead and use my Move tool, and I'm going to move this over, because obviously I don't want to have the building itself clipped. So there it is, right? My building's there. Now I need to make sure that this outline here, right, the inside the building is white, not the building itself. So let me go ahead and make a few selections. So let me jump to, let's turn these off, turn this off. And I'm just going to select the interiors here. Do this, do that. I need those as well. There we go. So I have all of this established. Let me jump back to my image here, and I'm going to create a layer mask on this particular layer. So I'm going to go Add Layer Mask. Went the wrong direction. Let me go Select Inverse, and let me go ahead and add the layer mask. There we go. And so now that's been cut out. Okay. Oh, I should have selected that piece too. So let me go back in and make sure we get the porch. And select it there. There it is. Alright, so I have that part of it. Let me jump back to the layer mask. I have to paint in black on that layer mask. So we'll go ahead and paint, and then that shows through as well. So if I press Control 0, right, we're now starting to see this in a little bit of context with the person. It's potential that I'd like to see a little bit more of this, in which case I can go back to Image and then Canvas Size. This time I'm going to pick my anchor as being the top, and I'm just going to extend the height from 20 to 30 so I get a little bit more. Right. And then we can go ahead and crop everything. Oh, let me give myself back that information. Go to Paintbrush, and I'll paint in white again on this, so we'll get more of this back. And that's based on the image itself. Okay? So I have all of that. If I turn on my shadows, remember my shadows are cast on the ground the way I want. Let me press Control 0, and then I'm going to need to crop. So I'll use the crop tool, and we'll crop down to here. That's pretty good. Crop over. All right. Using the principles of composition, I'm trying to isolate and put this person over here on kind of the third and the third. Right. We have my nice floor plan there. Everything is looking pretty good. I'll go ahead and say OK. And so now I'm looking at this image and I'm saying, okay, well, is the background a little bit too stark? Right. The other fundamental problem is that, and I didn't catch this until right now, this person's shadow is going this way, the building shadow is going that way, so they're backwards. So I really need to flip this. So let me go to, let me take a step back. To where I have more of the image. And that background image here, right, let me go ahead and I'm going to disconnect the two so that the mask is independent. And then I'm going to flip this image. So let me go to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to flip vertical. Okay, there we go. So again, not quite right. I'm going to go to flip again, and we'll flip horizontal. Transform, flip horizontal. All right, so building shadow matches up quite nicely with the person shadow now, right? So I'm happy. Those two things need to match up for it to look correct. Now that I have those two established correctly, we'll go ahead and crop this image down. Crop that image over. Knock that out like this. And I'll go ahead and say OK. Alright, so now I have the plan relatively established. The background image here might be a little strong, so I can turn down the opacity of it a little bit. Right, so we have a little bit less to it. It's grayed out a little bit. The checkerboard pattern is just saying that it's semi-transparent. Let me go ahead and turn on these other two layers so we'll see over it a little bit more. I'm going to create one layer at the bottom so that checkerboard pattern goes away, and I'll just paint white on it. Maybe 1 second here. I don't think I got pure white. Nope, I did. Alright. So I've got that nicely established. So I have my plan. I have my background imagery. It still might be a little strong, in which case we can tone it down even a little bit more. Something like that. Works nicely. Okay, so now that I have it set up, I'm going to go to File, Save for Web. Yes, it exceeds the maximum size, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. Now the important thing to recognize here, because I started with that PDF file that was scaled, this drawing is actually to scale. It's at 1/4 inch equals a foot. So if I were to go print it out, as long as I don't check the box for scaled fit, it's going to be correctly scaled on my final drawing, which is the idea. Let me press Control 0. All right, so there it is. Relatively happy with it. Looks like I have a little line here that probably needs adjustment. I'll go ahead and click Save. and we'll put it into my 135 folder, and then my plan. Here it is. And we'll call this final plan. Right? And I'll go ahead and click save, and that works. Now in reality, I probably should start pushing this a little bit more. I would like to have a little bit of a path that comes up to my front door, right? So this was enough, but if we're extending this a little bit more, it wouldn't hurt to have a little bit more detail involved here. So let me press Control-. There we go. And let me work just with the background layer here. There it is. And I'm going to clone stamp on this layer. Oh, I have to rasterize the layer. There we go. And I'll use clone stamp to make this a little bit bigger here. There. And I'm going to use a brush that's very hard for right now for the initial cut here. And let me hold down Alt to sample from here. And I'm going to work my way toward the building. Using the imagery from the road here. Like that. Right, and so I established that path. Now it has a little bit of little rocks on either side. So let me make this a little bit smaller here, and we'll sample from the rocks. Right, and I can copy a few more of those little rocks on the side. Might need to blend that out a little bit. Right, so you get the idea. Okay. Now when we look at it from a little bit further away, we can start to see that I've added the path to the front door if I turn on, right, that. So I can do these kinds of little modifications to the photo using the basic Photoshop skills that we've done before, so that you can really start to see how this is working to integrate your building into whatever the photograph is. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. So what I want you to do today is get the plan in, get a photograph behind, kind of like we did with the elevation. When we get to sections next class, we're going to deal with more like how to add interior materials, how to add lighting conditions, and that sort of thing in Photoshop. Okay? So I'll turn you loose now. We will take a break in about 2 minutes, and we're going to walk across because Tatiana wanted us to give our expert design opinion to whatever it is that they're doing over there. So if you don't want to do it, you want to stay here and work, that's okay too. But I'm going to go over there, and you can have a look. Okay? One other side note, I have been working a great deal on the website over the break, so there may be a few quirks that don't quite work yet. I've heard that it's tough to log in, it keeps kicking people out. Let me fix it. I think I know exactly what the fix is. I just have to edit a page and then it should work. But it should be working a lot faster, which is the idea. So hopefully it is, but let me know if there's any issues.